I get it in my inbox almost every single day. Ubiquinol is the GOAT for cardiac function. Now, I mentioned ubiquinol many times in the mitochondrial support stack. So again, we're going to go over it briefly. Let's move over to optimizing our cardiac function using caffeine. Yes, you don't need stimulants. You don't need Clen. You don't need ephedrine or, some of the other PDs, which we'll discuss in part 2. Caffeine gets the job done. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all of the benefits of caffeine. I'm sure you guys are all familiar. Caffeine was indeed included in the WADA prohibited list from 1993 to 2002 due to its performance-enhancing effects, but it's now been taken off the prohibited list because, you're going to tell your athletes not to go to Starbucks during the race or before the race or in between competitions. I mean, that's asininely insane. So again, 1 point for the athletes and 1 point less for WADA. Ha, joke's on you. Okay, you can see all the benefits of caffeine on the screen. I'm not going to bore you. Let's just abbreviate it real quick. Caffeine acts as a central nervous system stimulant, has been shown to increase the breakdown of stored fat as a fuel source during exercise so that it can improve your endurance. Caffeine can reduce the perception of fatigue and pain during exercise, so now you can train longer. And caffeine, being a stimulant after all, has the capacity to improve overall skeletal muscle contraction as well as cardiac muscle contraction. So now you have increased power output systemically, and it does so by increasing calcium release within the muscle cells. And whether that's in skeletal muscle cells or cardiac muscle cells, caffeine helps with contractile capacity. So for me, it's a no-brainer, but most of the athletes that I know that do endurance sports or, max out strength events, they keep the caffeine for the event. They don't take it every day. They only use it for the event because, the body builds up a tolerance to caffeine, as I know, because I take 1 or 2 cups of coffee per day. How many shots that is? Maybe 4 to 8 sometimes. I'm a little bit overdoing it. But again, caffeine has so many, stimulatory nootropic benefits, getting the job done. So for me, for looking for productivity, it's a no-brainer. But if you're after optimized endurance, you might want to abstain from caffeine and only use it between 200 milligrams to 600 milligrams when you actually need it before an important event. So keep that in mind. Don't overdo it because you do build up a significant tolerance to it. And before you know it, you're up to 1,000 milligrams or 1,500 milligrams per day without raising your heart rate after all. All right, moving over to Ubiquinol, which I mentioned extensively on this YouTube channel. I think I was one of the first, or at least I never heard anybody else talk about Ubiquinol in the context of improving one's endurance and overall workout capacity in the gym if you train for strength or hypertrophy. Never heard anybody else talk about it. So here we are again talking about Ubiquinol. I talked about it many years ago. And now that many of you guys have followed my advice, I get it in my inbox almost every single day. Ubiquinol is the GOAT for cardiac function. Now, I mentioned ubiquinol many times in the mitochondrial support stack. So again, we're going to go over it briefly. I believe that the effective dosages are 100 milligrams ubiquinol in the morning, 100 milligrams ubiquinol in the evening, and then between 100 to 400 milligrams ubiquinol before activity. So that might be between 300 to 600 milligrams ubiquinol per day. And yes, it's going to set you back financially quite a bit. So again, keep it a secret. Babe, how many ubiquinol do you run per day? Just one, babe. Just one, right? But secretly you run 6, right? You still admit it to it, but it's a white lie to keep the relationship going. 600 milligrams per day, that's where the sweet spot is. Man, I can train for hours. The cardiac function that ubiquinol supports, legendary. So again, let's go over it briefly. Ubiquinol is involved in the electron transport chain, a process which occurs within the mitochondria and is responsible for generating ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Again, ubiquinol acts as a very potent antioxidant, helping to neutralize free radicals and protect the cells from oxidative stress, which always happens during strenuous exercise. Ubiquinol has potent benefits on cardiovascular health, where it plays a role in supporting the function of the heart and overall blood vessels. And ubiquinol is the active form of coenzyme Q10, which is generally touted as a very heart-healthy supplement, but ubiquinol is considered to be more bioavailable than its oxidized form, ubiquinone. So keep in mind, if you go with coenzyme Q10, you don't know how much ubiquinol and ubiquinone you're actually getting. Now, the body will oxidize a part of the ubiquinol before it's metabolically used, but still, if you go with the non-oxidized version, the ubiquinol, you have a higher exercise capacity compared to taking regular coenzyme Q10. It's a no-brainer. Stick with Ubiquinol. That's the most studied and also the most potent form when it comes to increasing your endurance or overall strength aspirations. With that, again, Shilajit fulvic acid with each serving of Ubiquinol. So if you take Ubiquinol in the morning, pre-workout, and in the evening, every time you take it, 250 milligrams Shilajit fulvic acid, because the fulvic acid helps with absorption of nutrients, particularly Ubiquinol. That's well studied in the context of positive heart remodeling. And Shilajit fulvic acid has also been suggested to support mitochondrial function. It has a very potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And Shilajit is also considered to be an adaptogen. And don't worry, we'll get to all of the adaptogens a little bit later in this part, and especially part 2, that's full with adaptogens, besides the ashwagandha root extract and the Shilajit fulvic acid. Adaptogens are substances that help the body adapt to stress and improve resilience. So again, endurance exercise, especially long distance, that's a ton of stress. And whether that's stress from cortisol or, slight amounts of rhabdomyolysis due to excessive amounts of muscle protein breakdown, or increased stress from reactive oxygen species, or increased stress from all this lactic acid, which is now building up, which we also have solutions for. More on that later. Right? Adaptogens help with that tremendously, so it's a no-brainer to add them in. Moving over to PQQ, Pyrroloquinoline Quinone, which now I've said so many times that it rolls off the tongue. Pyrroloquinoline Quinone. Man, impossible to pronounce, but I still got it done. Okay, 20 milligrams upon waking and maybe 20 milligrams before activity. PQQ is a cofactor in several enzymatic reactions, which help with cellular energy production. PQQ has been shown to support mitochondrial biogenesis, where new mitochondria are formed within skeletal muscle or cardiac muscle or other tissues of the body where the mitochondria are present, which is pretty much 99% of the tissues. So PQQ help with that, ultimately contributing to ATP synthesis. PQQ, Pyrroloquinoline Quinone, is also a very potent antioxidant, which, well, you guessed it, also helps to neutralize free radicals and reduce oxidative stress. Now, besides that, PQQ has also several neuroprotective properties, suggesting that brain health and cognitive function might improve, which is always a benefit if you're going for endurance sports, because everybody knows that terrible post-exercise brain fog, which can occur when you train for long hours at a time and you get into that zone and you're just going and going and going. And suddenly you're at the finish line and then you don't have a goal for that day, but you still have to get jobs done. And then in that case, PQQ might be able to help. Although I believe that cerebrolysin or something like Semax is a lot more potent than PQQ supplementation. This is something you can look into. Again, the effects that you get from PQQ are going to be very nuanced on top of some of the things that we'll discuss in this video. But still, if you can afford it, if you feel that the evidence is substantial enough for you to invest in 20 to 40 milligrams PQQ per day, especially around the workouts, then feel free to go ahead. You might get some benefit on top of the other stuff which we're discussing. Now, taurine, very cheap, a no-brainer, 5,000 milligrams before activity or 500 to 1,000 milligrams with meals. Let's say between 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams per day, depending on your activity level and your overall muscularity. Again, taurine plays a role in energy metabolism by helping to regulate the utilization of glucose and fatty acids as fuel sources in the production of adenosine triphosphate. So again, a lot of these compounds help with ATP synthesis. That's why I included them in the mitochondrial support stack. And if you want more information about how these compounds, how these supplements contribute to ATP synthesis, please watch that video. It will explain a lot more. It's over an hour in length. Now, where taurine really shines is in its benefits to regulate osmotic pressure, which is the water balance between the intercellular and extracellular space. So if you're turning over a lot of nutrients between the cell itself and the extracellular space where it can end up in the bloodstream or comes from the bloodstream, this is where taurine contributes. So if you want to mitigate your lower back pumps and shin splints, taurine supplementation is the way to go. But if you want to have optimized nutrient delivery, and that includes all of the nutrients, then taurine is pretty much essential. And this way, taurine is also involved in the regulation of electrolyte balance, particularly calcium and magnesium, which of course help with overall muscular contractions, right? Calcium contracts the muscles and magnesium relaxes the muscles. Now, more magnesium a little bit later. You'll get adequate amounts of calcium from your diet. And if you're supplementing with vitamin D3 and vitamin K2, then calcium, transport throughout the body is certainly optimized. I didn't include that in this video, but now that I'm thinking about it, an honorable mention for dietary calcium coming from, a multitude of animal meat sources, or perhaps yogurt or other dairy products, and vitamin D3 supplementation, as well as vitamin K supplementation. I'll link my recommendations down below. More magnesium later. And taurine has been suggested to enhance muscular contractions and reduce muscle damage by acting as a little bit of an antioxidant. It may even help with force production and the efficacy of muscular contractions, but that comes indirectly from its regulatory role in calcium and magnesium absorption between the intercellular and extracellular space. So overall, taurine supplementation can improve performance quite substantially. And since the heart contains a lot of taurine, I think, again, taurine supplementation is a no-brainer. And if you train for endurance, supplement towards the higher end of taurine, let's say 5,000 milligrams per day. And that can either be pre-workouts or split up 1,000 milligrams with meals, or maybe 1,500 milligrams with meals if you only eat 3 meals per day.